Every time you get upset about something, you are literally pushing money away from your life. Every moment you spend being bothered by criticism, frustrated by delays, or angry about unfairness is a moment you could have spent solving problems and creating value. The wealthy understand something that struggling people refuse to accept. Your emotions are expensive luxuries that cost you opportunities, relationships, and income. While you are having feelings about your situation, your competition is improving their situation. While you are being authentic and expressing your disappointment, someone else is getting the promotion you wanted. The harsh reality is that nobody cares about your feelings except you, and spending time on emotional reactions is the fastest way to guarantee a mediocre life. The people who act as if nothing bothers them are not cold or heartless. They are simply smart enough to know that success requires emotional discipline that most people are too weak to develop. 93% of people allow daily frustrations to control their destiny. They wake up each morning and hand over the keys to their success to whoever happens to cross their path that day. A rude cashier ruins their mood. A traffic jam destroys their confidence. A critical comment from a colleague sends them spiraling into self-doubt for hours. These people have given away their most precious asset, their emotional control, and with it, their ability to create the life they truly want. But what about the other 7%? What separates them from the masses who live at the mercy of their circumstances? The answer lies in a simple but powerful principle that every successful person has mastered. They have learned to act as if nothing bothers them, not because they feel nothing, but because they refuse to let external events dictate their internal state. Let me ask you the million-dollar question that will determine whether you join the ranks of the successful or remain trapped with the struggling majority. When something goes wrong in your life, and it will go wrong, who is in control? Is it you, or is it the situation? Is it the person who disappointed you, or is it your response to that disappointment? The moment you understand that your response is always your choice, you step into a completely different category of human being. I want you to think about someone you know who seems unshakable. Maybe it's a boss who stays calm during crisis meetings. Perhaps it's a friend who never seems rattled by bad news. Or maybe it's a public figure who maintains composure under intense pressure. What you're witnessing is not a person without feelings. What you're seeing is someone who has mastered the art of emotional regulation. They feel the same frustrations, disappointments, and pressures that everyone else feels, but they have developed the skill to prevent these emotions from controlling their behavior. This skill is not genetic. It's not a gift that some people are born with and others are not. It's a learned ability, and like any skill, it can be developed through understanding and practice. The brain science behind this is actually quite simple. When something happens that triggers an emotional response, your brain's alarm system, the amygdala, sends out stress signals throughout your body. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your thinking becomes clouded. This happens automatically, and you cannot stop it. But here's what most people don't understand. Between that automatic reaction and your behavioral response, there is a space. In that space lies your power to choose. The person who acts as if nothing bothers them has learned to expand that space. They feel the initial emotional surge just like everyone else, but they have trained themselves to pause, process, and then choose their response based on what will serve them best, not what feels most natural in the moment. This is not about suppressing emotions or pretending problems don't exist. That approach leads to stress, health problems, and eventual emotional explosions. Instead, it's about acknowledging what you feel while maintaining control over what you do. It's the difference between being a passenger in your emotional vehicle and being the driver. The cost of not mastering this skill is enormous. Every time you allow yourself to be visibly bothered by circumstances, you send a message to the world that you are not in control of your own life. Employers notice this. They promote people who stay calm under pressure, not those who crumble when things get difficult. Customers trust salespeople who remain composed when handling objections, not those who become defensive or flustered. Friends and family respect individuals who can be counted on to remain stable during challenging times. Consider Jennifer, a marketing director at a growing tech company 2 years ago. She would react to every criticism from her boss with visible frustration. She would argue, defend herself loudly, and often storm out of meetings when she disagreed with decisions. Her colleagues began to see her as unreliable and dramatic. Despite her technical skills, she was passed over for promotion twice. Then, Jennifer learned this principle. She began practicing emotional control. When her boss criticized a campaign she had worked hard on, instead of immediately defending it, she would pause, consider the feedback objectively, and respond with something like, "I can see your point. Let me think about how we can improve this approach." The change in how others perceived her was dramatic. Within 6 months, she was leading major projects. Within a year, she received the promotion she had been seeking. The transformation wasn't about becoming emotionless or agreeable. Jennifer still felt frustrated when her work was criticized. The difference was that she no longer allowed that frustration to control her behavior. She had learned to act as if the criticism didn't bother her, even when it did, because she understood that her composed response would serve her better than an emotional reaction. This principle applies to every area of life. The parent who remains calm when their teenager is being difficult creates an environment where real communication can happen. The entrepreneur who stays composed when a major client leaves builds confidence in their remaining customers. The spouse who doesn't react defensively during arguments creates space for resolution rather than escalation. Most people spend their entire lives being victims of their emotions. They believe that if something bothers them, they must show it. They think that expressing every frustration is honest and authentic. What they don't realize is that this approach keeps them powerless and limits their potential for success in every area of life. The truth is that your emotional reactions are habits, and like all habits, they can be changed. The people who seem naturally calm and composed have simply developed better emotional habits than those who appear constantly stressed and bothered. They have trained themselves to respond rather than react, to choose rather than be chosen. For starting today, you have a choice. You can continue to live at the mercy of your circumstances, allowing every challenge to disturb your peace and limit your potential. Or you can begin developing the skill that separates successful people from everyone else, the ability to act as if nothing bothers you, because you understand that your response is always your choice. Your brain is designed to keep you alive, not to make you successful. This ancient survival system that served our ancestors well when they faced wild animals now sabotages modern achievement. When your computer crashes right before a deadline, your brain triggers the same alarm bells that once warned of approaching lions when your boss sends a stern email. Your body floods with the same stress chemicals that helped our cave-dwelling ancestors run from danger. The problem is simple. Your primitive brain cannot tell the difference between a genuine threat and a workplace challenge. It treats a critical performance review the same way it would treat a charging rhinoceros. Your heart pounds, your palms sweat, your thinking becomes fuzzy, and you prepare for battle or flight. But you cannot fight your boss, and you cannot run away from your responsibilities, so you sit there marinating in stress hormones, making poor decisions while appearing bothered and unprofessional. But here's the breakthrough that changes everything. You can override this automatic system. While you cannot prevent the initial alarm, you can choose what happens next. This is where successful people separate themselves from everyone else. They understand that the first emotional surge is biology, but the second, third, and fourth reactions are choice. Let me tell you about Marcus, a restaurant owner who learned this lesson the hard way. 3 years ago, his restaurant was struggling. Customers complained, staff quit regularly, and suppliers were late with deliveries. Marcus reacted to every problem with visible stress. He would shout at employees when orders went wrong. argue with suppliers over delays, and become defensive when customers voiced complaints. His stress was contagious, his staff walked on eggshells, his customers felt uncomfortable, and his business was failing. Marcus discovered something that revolutionized his life and his business. He learned about the 90-second rule. Scientists have proven that any emotion, when left alone, will run its natural course through your body in exactly 90 seconds. That initial flood of anger, frustration, or anxiety will peak and then begin to fade within a minute and a half. The only reason emotions last longer is because we keep feeding them with our thoughts and reactions. Marcus began practicing this principle religiously. When a customer complained about cold food, instead of immediately becoming defensive, he would mentally count to 90 while maintaining eye contact and nodding. By the time 90 seconds passed, his initial reaction had subsided and he could respond professionally. He would say something like, "I completely understand your disappointment. Let me make this right immediately." The customer would be surprised by his calm response, and the situation would resolve quickly and positively. When suppliers called with delays, Marcus would listen to the entire message before responding. Those 90 seconds of processing time allowed him to think strategically instead of reactively. Instead of threatening to find new suppliers, he would ask questions about alternative solutions and work collaboratively to solve the problem. Suppliers began going out of their way to help him because they appreciated working with someone who remained reasonable under pressure. The transformation in his business was remarkable. Employee turnover dropped to almost zero because people enjoyed working for someone who stayed calm during busy periods. Customer complaints decreased because issues were resolved professionally rather than escalated through defensive responses. Within 18 months, Marcus had opened a second location. Within 3 years, he owned 4 successful restaurants. The secret weapon that Marcus discovered is available to every person in every situation. When something triggers your stress response, you have a choice. You can either react immediately and let your primitive brain control the situation, or you can create space between the trigger and your response. In that space lies your power to choose a reaction that serves your long-term interests rather than your immediate emotion. This technique works because it gives your rational mind time to regain control. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logical thinking and decision-making, needs a few moments to overcome the emotional hijacking that occurs during stress. By creating this pause, you allow your higher thinking to kick in and guide your response. Most people believe that immediate reactions are more honest or authentic. They think that if they feel angry, they should show anger. If they feel frustrated, they should express frustration. This belief keeps them prisoners of their emotions and limits their success in every area of life. The most successful people understand that authenticity doesn't mean expressing every emotion as it arises. True authenticity means being true to your values and goals, not your momentary feelings. The beautiful thing about this skill is that it becomes automatic with practice. The more you pause before reacting, the more natural this response becomes. Eventually, you develop what I call an emotional buffer zone. Challenging situations that once would have sent you into immediate stress mode now register as problems to be solved rather than threats to be battled. You begin to act as if nothing bothers you because, in a very real sense, nothing can bother you unless you give it permission to do so. Now that you understand the science behind emotional mastery, let me give you the exact tools that high achievers use every single day to maintain their composure and control their responses. These are not theories. These are battle-tested techniques that will transform how others perceive you and how you handle every challenging situation. The first technique is what I call the professional poker face method. Watch any successful CEO during a crisis press conference. Notice how they maintain steady eye contact, keep their voice tone even, and control their facial expressions, regardless of how devastating the news might be. This is not natural behavior. It's trained behavior. They understand that the moment they show panic, confusion, or anger, They lose credibility with their audience. You can develop this same skill starting immediately. When someone delivers bad news, criticism, or creates a problem for you, your first job is to control your physical response. Keep your shoulders relaxed. Maintain normal eye contact. Keep your voice at the same volume and pace you would use in casual conversation. Breathe normally through your nose, not through your mouth. These simple physical controls send a message to your brain that the situation is manageable, which actually makes it easier to think clearly. But physical control is only half the battle. The real transformation happens when you change your internal dialogue. Most people have conversations in their heads that make situations worse. When their boss criticizes their work, they think things like, "This is unfair," or "She doesn't appreciate everything I do," or "I can't believe this is happening." These thoughts fuel emotional reactions and cloud judgment. Successful people use a completely different internal script. They practice what I call the "so what" technique when something goes wrong. Instead of focusing on the problem, they immediately ask themselves 3 questions. So what does this mean for my goals? So what can I learn from this situation? And so what action should I take next? This mental shift moves them from victim mode to solution mode instantly. Take David, a software developer who was publicly criticized by his project manager during a team meeting for missing a critical deadline. His first instinct was to explain all the reasons why the delay wasn't his fault. Instead, he used the "so what" technique, he thought. So what does this mean for my goals? It means I need to rebuild trust. So what can I learn? I need better time estimation skills. So what action should I take? I need to present a recovery plan. Instead of defending himself, David said, "You're right, I underestimated the complexity. Let me show you my plan to get back on track by Friday." The situation was resolved in 2 minutes instead of becoming a lengthy argument. This internal reframing process works because it forces your brain to focus on solutions rather than problems. When you change your mental focus from "why is this happening to me" to "how can I handle this effectively?" you automatically shift from emotional reaction to strategic thinking. The third technique is the power of emotional rehearsal. Professional athletes visualize successful performance before important games. You can use the same method for challenging situations. Spend 5 minutes each morning mentally rehearsing how you will handle difficult scenarios. Visualize yourself staying calm when a customer becomes angry. Practice your composed response to unexpected criticism. Mentally rehearse maintaining your professional demeanor when plans fall apart. And this mental practice creates neural pathways that make calm responses more automatic when real situations arise. Instead of being caught off guard by challenges, you will have already practiced your ideal response multiple times in your mind. These 3 techniques, physical control, mental reframing, and emotional rehearsal, form the foundation of unshakable composure. They require no special talent, no expensive training, and no perfect circumstances. They simply require the decision to take control of your responses rather than letting your responses control you. Master these basics and you will notice immediate changes in how people respond to you and how effectively you handle every challenge that comes your way. Techniques are important, but they are only the beginning. What separates truly successful people from those who merely know success strategies is character. Character is what determines your behavior when nobody is watching, when the pressure is intense, and when doing the right thing is difficult. Building unshakable character means developing a personal operating system that guides your responses automatically, regardless of external circumstances. The most successful people in any field share one common trait. They are predictable in their emotional responses. This doesn't mean they are boring or lack passion. It means that people can count on them to remain stable and rational when situations become challenging. This predictability creates enormous trust and credibility, which translates directly into career advancement, stronger relationships, and increased influence. Consider Rachel, a senior nurse in a busy emergency room. Every day she faces life and death situations, dealing with panicked families, overworked colleagues, and constant pressure. 3 years ago, Rachel was known for her medical skills, but also for her volatile temperament. When doctors disagreed with her assessments, she would argue loudly. When families became demanding, she would become visibly frustrated. When administration made unpopular policy changes, she would complain bitterly to anyone who would listen. The turning point came when Rachel realized that her emotional unpredictability was undermining her effectiveness. Doctors began avoiding her input because they never knew if she would react professionally or emotionally to their decisions. Patients' families requested other nurses because they sensed her stress. Despite her clinical expertise, she was passed over for a supervisory position because administration questioned her leadership temperament. Rachel decided to develop what she called her professional identity. She created a clear set of principles that would guide her responses in any situation. I will always prioritize patient care over my personal feelings. I will respond to criticism with curiosity rather than defensiveness. I will treat every person with respect, regardless of how they treat me. These principles became her decision-making filter for every interaction. The transformation was remarkable. When doctors questioned her recommendations, instead of defending them emotionally, she would present her reasoning calmly and accept their final decisions gracefully. When families became demanding or rude, she would focus on their underlying fear and address their concerns with compassion rather than taking their behavior personally. When administration announced unpopular changes, she would focus on how to make the new policies work effectively rather than complaining about things beyond her control. Within 1 year, Rachel was promoted to charge nurse. Within 2 years, she was leading the hospital's patient care improvement committee. The same medical knowledge that had always been her strength became exponentially more effective because it was now paired with emotional reliability. This is the power of developing a consistent character. When people know they can count on you to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively, they begin to seek your input, trust your judgment, and offer you opportunities. Your reputation becomes one of your most valuable professional assets. Building this character requires a long-term perspective. Most people live in a constant state of reaction to immediate circumstances. They make decisions based on how they feel in the moment rather than what serves their long-term interests. Unshakable people have learned to think in decades, not days. They ask themselves, how will this response affect my reputation over the next 5 years, rather than how can I express what I'm feeling right now? This perspective creates emotional distance from temporary problems. When you know that today's crisis will be forgotten within months, it becomes easier to respond with composure rather than panic. When you understand that your consistent character is building a reputation that will serve you for years, it becomes easier to choose thoughtful responses over emotional reactions. Your character is your personal brand. And like any valuable brand, it must be carefully cultivated and consistently maintained. Knowledge without implementation is worthless. You now understand the principles, the science, and the techniques, but none of this matters unless you put it into practice systematically. The difference between people who change their lives and those who simply collect information is a structured plan for implementation. Let me give you the exact 30-day transformation blueprint that will turn these concepts into automatic behaviors during your first week. Focus entirely on awareness. Your only job is to notice when you begin to feel bothered by something. Don't try to change your responses yet, simply observe. When someone cuts you off in traffic, notice the surge of irritation. When you receive critical feedback, notice the defensive thoughts that arise. When plans fall apart, notice the frustration building in your chest. Write these observations down each evening. Awareness is the foundation of all change. And most people skip this crucial step. Week 2 introduces response control. Now that you're aware of your emotional triggers, begin practicing the 90-second pause when you feel that familiar surge of irritation, anger, or frustration. Count slowly to 90 before you speak or act. Use this time to breathe deeply and ask yourself, what response would serve my long-term interests best? Don't expect perfection. You're building new neural pathways, and this takes time in week 3. Focus on proactive mindset development. Instead of waiting for problems to trigger your emotions, begin each day by mentally preparing for potential challenges. Spend 5 minutes each morning visualizing yourself handling difficult situations with calm confidence. Practice your internal dialogue for common scenarios, dealing with unreasonable customers, receiving unexpected criticism, facing financial pressure, or managing relationship conflicts. Week 4 is your mastery testing phase. Actively seek situations that would normally bother you and use them as practice opportunities. Volunteer to handle the difficult customer complaint. Offer to present the bad news at the team meeting. Take on the project with the impossible deadline. These situations become training grounds rather than sources of stress. But let me tell you the complete story of someone who used this exact process to transform not just their emotional responses, but their entire life trajectory. 3 years ago, I met Elena, a talented architect working for a mid-sized firm. She had excellent technical skills and creative vision, but she had a reputation for being high management and dramatic. When clients requested changes to her designs, she would become visibly frustrated and argue about why their modifications would ruin the project. When contractors called with construction problems, she would become agitated and blame them for not following her specifications properly. When her boss assigned her to work with difficult clients, she would complain loudly about the unfairness of always getting the problem accounts. Elena's emotional volatility was limiting her career advancement. Partners at the firm were hesitant to put her in front of important clients because they never knew if she would handle unexpected challenges gracefully or become defensive and argumentative despite her talent. She was consistently passed over for senior positions. The wake-up call came when Elena lost a major client after becoming visibly frustrated during a design review meeting. The client had requested significant changes that would require weeks of additional work. Instead of handling this professionally, Elena's frustration showed clearly on her face and in her tone. She made comments about how the changes would destroy the architectural integrity of the project. The client felt criticized and uncomfortable, and they terminated the contract the following day. Elena's boss pulled her aside and told her bluntly that her emotional reactions were becoming a liability for the firm. He suggested she consider whether architecture was the right career for her. That conversation was the motivation Elena needed to completely change her approach. She committed to the 30-day transformation process with absolute discipline. During Awareness Week, Elena was shocked to discover how often she became emotionally reactive. She counted over 40 instances in 7 days where she felt bothered by something related to work. She realized that her default response to any challenge was to become frustrated first and think logically second. Response Control Week was challenging for Elena. Pausing for 90 seconds felt unnatural and difficult, but she persisted even when she failed multiple times each day. Gradually, she began to notice that the pause gave her time to consider what she actually wanted to accomplish in each situation, rather than simply expressing her immediate emotional reaction. During Proactive Mindset Week, Elena began visualizing herself handling client changes with professional grace. She practiced responses like, "I understand you'd like to modify the design. Let me show you a few options for how we could incorporate these changes effectively." She rehearsed staying calm when contractors called with problems, focusing on solutions rather than blame. Mastery Testing Week was Elena's breakthrough period. She actively sought out challenging situations when a client requested major changes to a project that was nearly complete. Instead of her usual frustrated response, Elena calmly said, "These changes will create a much better outcome for your needs. Let me work up a revised timeline and cost estimate so we can move forward effectively." The client was impressed by her professionalism and agreed to the additional time and budget required. The transformation in Elena's career was dramatic and rapid. Within 3 months, She was assigned to the firm's most prestigious projects because partners knew she could handle demanding clients professionally. Within 6 months, she was promoted to senior architect. Within 1 year, she was made a junior partner in the firm. But the changes went beyond her career. Elena's relationships improved because she stopped taking disagreements personally. Her stress levels decreased dramatically because she no longer spent emotional energy being bothered by things beyond her control. Her confidence increased because she knew she could handle any situation that arose with calm professionalism. Today, Elena is known throughout her industry as someone who can manage the most challenging projects and difficult clients with grace and expertise. Her reputation for staying calm under pressure has made her one of the most sought-after architects in her region. The same transformation that happened for Elena is available to you right now. The techniques work, but only if you work the techniques. Starting tomorrow morning, begin your awareness week. Notice when you feel bothered. Don't judge it, don't fight it, just notice it. This single step will put you on the path to joining that elite 7% of people who control their responses rather than being controlled by their circumstances. Your new identity starts now. You are no longer someone who gets bothered by external events. You are someone who chooses your responses based on what serves your long-term success and happiness. This is who you are becoming, and this is who you will be